This is a Rattle and Hum Sports podcast. I'm Bryan Houston, and this is another in a series of interviews with Texas radio legends. Jimmy Rabbitt was one of the biggest radio stars of the 60s and 70s, the golden age of radio. He was a Tyler, Texas native who went on to work at the legendary McClendon station KLIF in Dallas. Later, he moved on to Los Angeles, where he was named Rock Jock of the Year and pioneered a music format called underground radio that mixed album rock with outlaw country music. Now sit back and listen to my interview with Texas Radio Hall of Fame legend Jimmy Rabbitt. Jimmy Rabbitt is with us on the phone right now. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Every day above ground's a good day.
Yes, it is. I had an opportunity just a little while ago to do an interview with the Dallas Cowboys play-by-play announcer, Brad Sham, who is also a member of the Radio Hall of Fame in Texas. And I asked him the question like this, so I'll ask you the same question. How did Jimmy Rabbitt become Jimmy Rabbitt?
Well, let's see. That's a long story, but actually Charlie Payne from KLIF, the general manager, claims to have put that name together. Actually, when I arrived, my name being Eddie Payne, being my real name, they didn't want to use the general manager's name on the air, so there went Eddie Payne, and they started talking about names, and somehow the Rabbitt came up, and there was a Rabbitt in St. Louis, and they asked me if I'd ever heard him. I said no, and then they went in one of those, and then somebody said, well, how about Buddy Rabbitt? And I said, oh, God, no. And so, and then somehow the Charlie Payne claims that I don't remember. I was shell-shocked, that just being in Dallas at KLIF and Gordon McClendon standing around with all these people and having to change my name right away was kind of weird. But it worked out really well.
I'd say
it could have been a worse name.
I'd say it worked out very well. Now, you were born and raised in Tyler?
When I was born in Holdenville, Oklahoma.
Okay.
But I was pretty much, my grandparents lived in Tyler, and so I pretty much spent most of my time, because my dad was in the Air Force, and they were always traveling. So sometimes, as I got older, rather than change schools, they sent me back to Tyler a couple times to go to high school. And so when I started to college, I started to college in Washington, D.C. at American University. And the old freshman breaker broke me, and I had to go back to TJC. So I went back to my grandparents and started at TJC to finish I would have been class of 64 at Washington, So I went back to Tyler, and that's how I ended up there.
Now,
I was selling shoes when Randy Robbins' mom bought some shoes from me, and she said, "You have a beautiful voice." And she started talking to me, and I didn't know Randy. I knew who he was on the radio, but she started talking to me about what a beautiful voice I had. And she had a son who was in radio, and then I said, "Well, I was a broadcast major at college," and started talking. She said, "Well, you ought to be on the radio." She went and told Randy, and so somehow it all ended up that I ended up being friends with Randy. So when the next opening came, they hired the shoe salesman. They put me on the air because I'd already been on the air, briefly doing college radio. They threw me off the air for playing Little Richard. But that was at American University, Whammo, their radio station. But I was on at study time one time, and, doing regular, because I was what they call it then, a mass communications major. So they put me on the air and took me off pretty briefly, pretty much. I went on to play rock and roll. I just didn't realize what study time was all about. And it's pretty much the story of my life.
Okay, you were made for radio, right?
I was made for radio?
Yes.
Yeah, I always think that somebody told me the other day that Rabbitt, you did wrong the right way. Because I was really lucky, because somebody asked me that the other day. I did an interview on XM and on that Outlaw channel, and they were talking about radio and all that, and I was thinking, they were going, well, how can you play all those kinds of musics together, and different genres and all. The DJ didn't understand it. And I said, well, that's the way it was when I came in radio. You know? When I first came on, I mean, Elvis and Gene Vincent, the same hour you played Frank Sinatra. You know, and it was just, you just had to learn how to mix them. You know, how to put them together and, you know, not become a thing. It's like Gordon the Pundit said, it's not what you play, it's what you don't play that makes you number one.
Very good.
You know?
Now,
as soon as you play that wrong one, they're gone.
Now, you started at, what, KGKB in Tyler?
Yeah, I started KGKB, right.
Okay, and so what year was that, do you recall?
That was the fall of '62.
Okay, and that was your first taste of radio?
Yeah, well, yeah, except for the college,
right.
Briefly. I was only on the air 3 times as part of my radio in college, so more or less I was, you know, so it was my first radio job. You know, Randy Robbins broke me in on the board, and, you know, and they put me on, the first thing they put me on early in the morning. I followed Granddad Glenn Rich, you know who he is, right?
I sure do.
From KLTV. Well, he was the morning man at KGKB. And he needed to get out of there early. So as part of my day shift, they put me on for an hour with him at the end, and I was grandson. So I followed him, and that gave him a time to get over to KLTV or whatever he had to do. And then I went on playing 1 hour of country, and then at 10 o'clock, which my shift normally would have started, which was a mix. I mean, George Shearing, Frank Sinatra, Teresa Brewer, Gene Vincent, Elvis, it all just mixed in there. It was housewives music, what they called it. You know, so then I played music all day till 3 o'clock, and then at 3 o'clock I could play rock and roll because they let school out.
Now, how long were you on the air at one time then with that shift?
Oh, man, I was just a kid then, so I went on at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 10. No, wait. O'clock. I went on at 9 and did the last hour of his show, and then I did, my shift would have been 10 until 6.
Wow. That's a long day.
Oh, yeah, well, Randy came on at 6, and he did till 1.
Wow, I didn't even think a radio station would stay on past 10 o'clock at night back in those days.
Oh, well, see, we were. That was the big joke with the Bill Young station. Bill Young was on a daytimer, and we were against Bill Young. You know, so and we used to, you know, say we don't run down at sundown. You know, and then they come back and say, well, yeah, but we don't poop the loop. You know, because we had a real poor signal. You know. So, I mean, that was our back and forth, you know. So that was my big battle. My first battle in radio as a program director was against Bill Young. Now, I brought in Long John Silver, the Bluebeard. Remember him from New Orleans?
Oh, yeah.
He worked in Tyler, Texas, believe it or not.
Wow.
That's a great story. That's a great story for the book, man.
Is that...
He called me. He picked up the phone. I picked up the phone one day. They made me PD when I came back, just before I went to work for Bill. When I came back to KGKB the second time, I've been to Corpus Christi and Port Arthur. So I came back and they made me PD. I was just a kid. So we went top 40. KGKB went totally top 40 then against Bill. And I picked up the phone one day and it was John Silver calling from New Orleans. And he said he was getting a Texas divorce and he was looking for a job. And I said, well, I can give you $60. And he said, I'll be there. And
wow.
He fucking arrived, excuse me. And he arrived on the bus.
That's fantastic. So how did you end up working with Billy Young at KDOC?
Oh, because, well, they turned, first of all, Bill hired me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, soon as Randy got a job in Fort Worth.
Okay.
And so Randy moved on to Fort Worth, and that left an opening at KDOC. Randy left a long time. He left, you know, he left while I was in Corpus Christi.
Okay.
I went to work for KDOC. And then when I came back when I quit KLIF and came back to Tyler looking for work, I went back to KGKB, and that's when they made me PD. And that's when I hired Paul Menard. He was one of my hires when I was, and John Silver, and some of those, you know, I forget who else, Gary Hamilton. You You know, so we had a all-star cast there, and we were doing a good job against Bill and Scared there for a little bit. And because when you got Long John Silver and you're on at night and they're turning their station off at sundown, right? You know, I mean, we were smoking pretty good. And then we did a marathon. We all stayed on. Each jock stayed on until they played and gave away 1,490 records.
Wow.
That was you know, and that's a long time. You know, so I did that, and you know, and so then Bill hired me, and not long after Bill hired me to go with KDOC, and I was working over there. Then Mrs. Buford called me up, and she said, "I'm going to have to turn KGKB off. Will you go do the sign off?" And I said, "Well, sure." So I went over and signed it off. I'll never forget. And I hung those earphones up, man, and that right there next to Luby's, that window. For a long time, though, you could look in and see that station because they didn't rip it up.
Wow.
They just sat there and did the earphones. I came back from Dallas one time, and it was like eerie.
Wow.
Because the station just went off the air. You know, that was the whole thing. It went dark.
That's all.
You know, and there's a whole FCC thing you have to read.
And you were the guy that did it. You were the last voice of KGKB.
I was the last guy for KGKB, and I hung their headphones up, and you could still see the record arm. The needle was still on the record. You could see it through the window. You know?
That's crazy.
And I was, you know, if I'd have thought, I didn't think that much about it, but I would have taken a picture because that's what radio's all about.
Sure.
You know, nobody went back in there. I'm sure there were still records and all that stuff.
Wow.
You know, because the Bufords owned that part, or whatever that part of the building was, so I don't think there's no telling. I just remember it was right next to Arthur Murray's.
Wow.
I don't know if they're still there.
I don't think they are. Now,
I don't think so.
where was the KDOK studio?
They were in the People's Building, which was around the corner.
Okay.
We were right across the street from the Tyler Theater.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right next to Luby's. That's where, you know.
Everybody was right there on the square then.
Yeah, we were right close to the square.
Okay.
KDOC was around you know where the People's Bank building, right?
Yes, sir.
It's still there.
Oh, that's
right?
awesome.
Okay, it was on the People's Bank. That's where KDOC was at that time.
So, based on your knowledge of radio, how good was KDOK back in those days?
Oh, Bill Young was amazing. Bill Young was amazing, and a lot of people. He really did his business. He had air checks, and he used to play them for Steve Lundy, and I don't know if he did, but I didn't hang with Randy when he worked there, but I'm sure he did, because he used to play us all these big jocks and all these big radio stations, and he wanted KDOC to sound like, you know. And if you listen, I've got the air check that I used to get the job in Dallas, and you know, and you listen to it, and you hear John Bass doing production, and Steve Lundy was doing. I was doing middays. Lundy was doing afternoons. Bill was signing on.
Now, where did you work with Hoss Huggins?
You what?
Where did you work with Hoss Huggins?
I never really worked with Hoss.
Okay. But
actually, Hoss and I met Hoss when I was my granddad died, and I came back to Tyler to do something and to get ready for the funeral, and Jerry Wexler called Robin Hood Bryans, who called Hoss and said, "Make sure Jimmy Rattle gets a new suit for the funeral," because I was signed to Atlantic Records right then, and I was taking time off from what we were doing. So Wexler said he knew me, and he knew I'd just jump on the plane, and so that's how I met him. He took me shopping.
Oh, okay.
That's how I met him.
Okay.
He took me shopping out and bought, you know, because I had my old funky cowboy, all that stuff, so I got a whole new suit from somewhere.
That's awesome. Now, okay,
yeah,
so
that's how I met him, and then over the years I've run into him many times.
all right, so now that clears that up.
He's a radio genius. I mean, he is a radio genius. He's one of the guys that knows how to talk to people on the radio. There's a lot of people don't know how to do that. You know, you don't talk to a crowd. You talk to the people. I'm talking to you.
Right.
You know, and Hoss is one of those guys. Hoss explains who Hoss is by being Hoss. You know,
that's great.
He's one of those guys, and some guys aren't. You know, and you know that I was really lucky. That's one of the things McClendon and Bill Young both taught me was that you're not talking to a crowd, you're talking to somebody. You know, and that's the Ron Chapman theory too. Ron Chapman always has his jocks put a picture of what they consider their ideal listener.
How did you end up at KLIF?
It was just one of the. I was cutting an air check one Saturday afternoon, doing the air check. I can send you that air check if you'd like to hear that KDOC air check.
I'd love to.
You know, and it's got Bill and Steve Lundy does the news.
Wow.
After me.
Wow.
He comes in. It's a great air check. But anyway, I was cutting an air check for WTIX in New Orleans. That's where I wanted to go to work, and they needed a top 40 jock, and I was doing housewives pretty much. You know, so I went on Saturday afternoon and I kind of picked it up just a bit, and, you know, and played a little more rock and roll than I normally played. I was cutting that air check, so that particular day, Johnny Borders, what's his real name? Johnny Borders, Johnny Dark was his radio name, Johnny
Right.
Borders. He was driving down the loop, around the loop, going somewhere from Dallas. And he was the PD at KLIF, and he heard me on the air, and he went, "How was that?" You know, so he called Bill Young and said, "Who is that?" And he said, "Well, that's Eddie Payne." He said, "Well, would you mind if we talk to him about a job?" Bill said, "Well, no, I guess not." You know, so he called me before he went back to Dallas, and he said, "Send me an air check." And I go, "Yeah, right." You know, I mean, I'm really going to get a job at KLIF, right? So I just said, okay. So I just mailed him that air check, and evidently it worked. You know? And the next thing I know, I'm standing there with Gordon McClendon changing my name.
Now, what was he like?
Huh?
What was Gordon McClendon like?
Oh, they were great. They were great to me. I was, like with all the guys that worked with McClendon over the years, I was one of the first ones that really got close because he was there the night I first went on, which was really terrifying if you're a kid. You know, Gordon McClendon was in the control room the whole night I went on. Not the whole night, he was in and out all night because it was an election night. So not only did I have to go on and do a show, but I had to go on and bring the election guys in and out. You know, it was like a terrifying. I'd hate to hear that air check. It was one of those nights. But Gordon was in there, you know, and so he kind of liked my attitude, I guess. So we kind of became friends, and I got away with a lot of stuff a lot of jocks wouldn't have got away with, just because, you know, I was there one time when he fired the whole staff with me, and the all-night guy. I think it was just two of us, because he went through. It was one of those McClendon firings where he went through and fired the morning team and brought in the new morning team. Fired in the midday and got in the new midday, you know. And he went right up and I was the night guy, you know. Then he kind of said, "Rabbitt, better keep your eye on him." It was one of those, you know. So it was kind of, you know, but it wasn't. You know, that's the way it was done in those days.
Wow.
You know.
What was it that you think made him the radio legend that he was, to build the kind of stations that he built? What set him apart?
He was I think basically he was like a movie guy. I don't know if you know, he made movies. He was into the whole Cielo Ranch. He had movies. He was in, and his dad, they owned a bunch of theaters and all that, but he was a theatrical kind of guy. Like he recreating baseball kind of. You know, he I don't know, he was an entertainer more than a radio guy. You know, and he really appreciated entertainers. That's when people like Charlie and Harrigan got a chance with him.
So,
because they were entertainers, they weren't DJs.
What did he teach you about being on the air?
Well, like I said, there's two things. The first thing I remember about Gordon McClendon was he took away my Robert Orban joke books and threw them in the trash. He said, yeah, but that wasn't the first night. That was later. when he was in there one night, and then he saw him laying there, and he said, "Oh, he said, you don't need these." Or not, and what he was trying to tell me was I was trying to be funny, and I should try to be funny, right? If you're funny, you're funny, but don't try to be funny.
Right.
You can't tell a joke on the radio unless you're Rex Miller. Like Rex Miller, he could get away with telling a joke, but I could. So that, and he told me on the music, because there was no format in those days even. They just said, these are the hits, and you put them in a rack after you played them so that nobody replayed them right away, but that was pretty much all there was about it. And every oldie was there. And they didn't even have a way to mark them when they, so it was like, and I asked him about it. Well, what kind of, how do we, because how do you mix it? He said, that's when I heard that. I've never forgotten it. It's not what you play, it's what you don't play.
Wow.
And he said, and that's the way it is. And he said, it's up to you to put them together, and if it doesn't work, you'll be out.
So you controlled your own music playlist then?
Oh, yeah, forever. I have never, ever had anyone control my playlist. When I was music director, when I was at KDOT, I was music director, so I controlled my own playlist more or less. When I was at KGKB, I was music director at PD. So and then when I got to Dallas, there was no format. You did your show the way you wanted to do it, and you broke it up this way, and these are the songs you played. So it was like McClendon said, if you don't know how to do that, then you won't be here long. Because there was nobody told you what to play. Later on, they started telling you what to play, but in the very beginning, it was up to you to balance it. That's why Charlie and Harrigan, when I first got there at night, Charlie and Harrigan would call me up sometimes when one of them was going to be sick the next day or something. Rabbitt, can you come in? And I'd come in and run the board because I knew the music and I could work with them. And that's why, it was a whole thing about being able to put that music together. It's a whole different world in the morning. Somehow that was... that was my thing, was putting it together. So, like I said, I've never, and somebody asked me that on XM the other day, well, did anybody ever tell you what to play? Yeah, but nobody ever insisted. Right? It's like payola. I never took payola. Nobody ever paid me any money to play anything, somebody might have bought me a dinner or something for doing it, but nobody ever said, would you play this,
So when you were picking your music, and this apparently, just in reading bios and things over the years about you, part of what made you who you became was that you had such a feel for music that was so different than anybody else's. What was it that you were looking for when you were looking for a hit record?
I don't know. It's just among favorite things, and I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I finally don't do anything anymore. And among my favorite things is to find music. When I hear a new song, I've been like that since I was a kid. When I hear a new song, I want to play it for someone. I don't want to just enjoy it. I want to play it for someone. And that's kind of the way I've been all my life. What my aunt was telling me that she's one of my friends on Facebook, my mom's brother's wife. So when I was a little bitty kid, that I was always telling everybody I was going to be on the radio one day because I knew all the words to all the songs already. So that's kind of I go all the way back to that, and that's kind of what I had an ear. I've always had an ear for good stuff, and that's what I like to do.
And obviously you were fantastic at it, because then you move on to California, to San Diego and Los Angeles, and you made a real name for yourself there. What was the highlight for you working in L.A.?
The highlight? Oh boy, there were a lot of highlights. L.A. was a great place to be when I was there in the late '60s, right on into the '70s. It was just rock and roll, Sunset Boulevard, drop top gold Cadillac convertibles. You know, I mean, it was an amazing time to be there, period. And I guess my was when I played the Whiskey A Go-Go with my band.
Wow.
That was probably the high point. You know, and Vince Gill opened for us.
No kidding. What year was that?
That was 1978.
Wow.
Yeah, just before he moved to Nashville. Yeah, Jimmy Rabbitt and Renegade, we played the Whiskey. That was the third time I played the Whiskey, but this was the time I remember most because, you know, it was like Linda Ronstadt and all these people were there. I played the Whiskey 3 times, and the third time was when Vince opened for us. And then Vince, the Sweethearts of the Rodeo, you know, the girl singers, one of them was a guitar player in my band, and she married Vince. and they took my steel player who married her sister, and they went to Nashville and left me stranded with that. I had to put another band together. So, you know, I still make a joke about saying, I don't know how he did, but I know he stole some of my band.
So you were playing music with your band and continuing to do radio at the same time?
Oh yeah, that was, well, the radio helped keep the, you know, like we sold the Roxy Theater out more times than anybody. We did a week of straight sellout, 2 shows a night at the Roxy. If I had been on the radio, I could have never done that.
Wow.
You know, but it helped, you know, and as long as you could sell it out, they'd hire you, you know. And so the radio, I mean, you know, nobody. The only question I ever had about being in the music business was at KLIF when let's see, John Abner, I will say John Abner and Abnac Records sued KLIF for not playing a Five Americans record. And you might want to check that out one day. I'm working on my book, so I got to find out what the court case is, how it all ended up. But Ken Dow and I had to go in and testify, and I was, you know, it was one of those where we had to take something off a survey, and we said we were the most accurate. You know, so I really don't remember who won or who lost, but at that same time, they started taking a look at me being in the music business at KLIF, and so they more or less, they sent me to Houston. That's when they sent me to Kilt for a while, and I went down to Kilt, and then when I came back, they said, well, you know, it'd be better since you're in the music business, and so that's when I went to work for Abnac and eventually moved to California.
That's fantastic. Tell me about becoming an internationally syndicated radio show back early 70s. What was that about?
Well, that was that ABC thing. That was amazing. That was early syndication. It was as close as you could get to it, and it didn't make sense when they called me. I was at KRLA, and we were beating KHJ, and they were letting me get away with all kinds. I was playing FM music on AM. It was a good time to be on that station. And the Tommy Smothers, I got signed to the Smothers Brothers record label, and I was going to be on the Smothers Brothers show as a character called Easy Rider. I was signed to the record label as Easy Rider. And Tommy Smothers heard me singing one night, doing a Johnny Cash song, so he wanted me. And I looked kind of like Easy Rider, mustache, fringe jacket. So they just said, well, that's what. So I was signed to do that, and I was on KRLA, and somehow the ABC thing started going, and they said, well, that would be good because you're going to be on all the O&Os, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, all of them, you know. And what we did was we cut an hour. You had to turn in, 25 tapes a week, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And you made the tapes, and they overnighted them to New York, dubbed the tapes off, and shipped them to the O&Os. And they all had it all down. It was pretty amazing that it worked. It didn't sound like it would, but you know, that was how we syndicated. So you know, I was on everywhere. 2.5 million or something. I don't know. You might want to check it on Facebook. That Alan Shaw sent me that thing.
This had to be some pretty heady stuff to be that big a radio star nationally at that time.
Well, that was, it was pretty amazing that it even worked. That's what because when you think about it, like I was afternoon drive in New York City. I was night man in L.A. I was middays in Pittsburgh, I think. It's whenever they wanted to play the tapes, because you had to be generic. You couldn't be New York City. It wasn't snowing. It wasn't raining. I'm on the air playing some music for I'm Jimmy Rabbitt. That's pretty much what so you really didn't even, you read the Rolling Stone, you could read the Rolling Stone, those kind of things. You could talk about that, but you had to be pretty generic. So it was pretty hard to do that. But I remember Jeans West was one of our commercial sponsors. We were right when that thing was working. They gave away over 1 million kazooes with a Jimmy Rabbitt logo on them.
Wow.
Because I used to play the kazoo on the air. I was the world's heaviest kazoo player. And it was a big joke, but Jeans West picked up on that and they gave them away. I'd love to see one of those today, but I know the guy told me there was over 1 million. And when you're reaching that many people, I guess 1 million's not that much, and probably a free kazoo. They didn't know who the Rabbit was. I'm finding that a lot of people don't even know that Jimmy Rabbitt was the Rabbit.
Wow. See, so this is good. This is good.
I run into on Facebook to go, are you related? Was that your dad? I never really thought of that, because all of a sudden in 69, right, in 70, I became the Rabbit.
Right.
And ABC hardly ever said Jimmy Rabbitt. It was always the Rabbit. It was that peace sign thing, that logo. So that was pretty much, so I was the Rabbit, knowing, for years there it was the Rabbit. I was on the air at KMET, it's Jimmy Rabbitt, but everybody said the Rabbit. So, and there's people to this day that still go, yeah, I used to listen to your dad. I said, oh, yeah, he was good, huh?
Now, I have to ask you about making the transition to KMET. KMET, you pioneered, I guess, what was called underground radio, didn't you?
Well, we put K-News on the air in Dallas. I was there when, that was the baby that I really didn't get a lot of credit for. But I started playing Hollywood kind of L.A. music. When I came back, they hired me back before I went to California. They hired me back after I quit AdMac. AdMac gave me a record by John and Robin in the In Crowd called Drums. And I said, I'm not promoting that, thank you. And left. So, and Ken Dow said, well, why don't you come back? And so they put me on Sunday night at KLIF. He said, till you find a job, and you can cut an air check. So he said, play that music there, play that heavy music that you like. So I did an underground show on KLIF on Sunday nights, and it clicked. So the next thing you know, McClendon spends hundreds of dollars putting psychedelic lights in the window. And it puts me back on 7 to midnight. I followed Charlie Van Dyke.
Wow.
And so it was amazing. And so that started, and pretty soon there was talk. And so I put a girl by the name, I forget her real name, but I called her Sandy Super Chick. She was the first DJ on K-News when it first went on. And, because we put it on in the sub-control room behind it there at KLIF, and they were trying to, because we all knew the FM was going to happen, especially me. I was really into it. It was already happening in L.A. It was already beginning. But by the time I got to L.A., I came at a perfect time when I could be on AM and play the FM music because the FM guys weren't doing it right. It was great to be there. Because when the FM first went on, it was a lot of clowns on there just playing a bunch of crap. Doing underground. Underground has to be a business. You still have to be good at what you do. You can't, and those guys were on there playing, just putting albums on, letting them track. When I got to L, that was what KPBC was. I guess they were cool, but I knew that you couldn't do that any more than a band could just get up and play and not ever talk to the audience. It was one of those. So I was really lucky. that I could do it, and I did it on AM, and before FM really started clicking.
So when you went to KMET, you started playing not only obviously the rock and roll, but you also started playing a lot of outlaw country, a lot of Texas country, actually. It seems like.
Yeah, my first job at KMET was middays. I followed B. Mitch Reed, and I went on for middays, and then I forget who came on after me. Dave Moore, I think. Dave Moorhead, I think. Anyway, and so they put me on middays, and I started mixing country music in there in middays more than, because I had a band at that time too, and I was signed to Atlantic Records to cut a country album. So I mean, I started mixing some country stuff in there, and Bob Kingsley was the PD at KLAC, and he was with me on KMET one day, and he said, "Why don't you come down here? Because they paid more money, KPPC, at KLAC." And he said, I said, well, why would I want to do it? So he convinced me that I could come on and start a whole new kind of country if I'd come on and do nights on the AM KLAC and do what I did. And that was before Willie or any of them. They were all just kind of starting. Yeah, I mean, I even played Bob Dylan.
Wow.
I mean, they let me get away with a bunch. And then they hired Kingsley. And he went to KBBQ, and then they started talking to the rest of us about our salaries, that we were making too much money. So I quit. More or less, I was laid off. But rather than do what I was going to do, I went to work for Kingsley, K-Barbecue, which became K-Rock.
Oh, okay.
While I was there. That's how I went from country to rock.
Man. How much longer did all this last before radio started changing so much that it started changing your career?
That'd be a hard one. How long?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of curious as to obviously things were beginning to change, probably, I would guess, going in late 70s into the 80s and so forth. So, you were on quite a ride there for a long time. But when did you start seeing things change, and how did you feel about radio as things started to change?
The radio whole thing started changing before I left LA. I started playing in the band and working at K-Rock erratically, KROQ, FM. That was kind of like, and I go fill in every once in a while, because they still owe me money to this day. And there's still a lawsuit involved with them, and I'm involved with the after thing because they just couldn't pay their bills, and so that was like in the 80s, and K-Rock was dying, and I got an offer to move to Aspen and run a radio station and have part ownership and do all that, so I left. So I spent the 80s in Aspen radio, and then I went. In the 90s, early 90s, I went to Dallas and went to work for Satellite Music, those people, Satellite Radio, which was another syndication. And they had just started doing that, and I did the Pure Gold format. And I realized right then that it paid good, but that wasn't what I wanted to do, was play the same gold records. So, I mean, Pure Gold, they played the same 80 records.
Right.
It's amazing how many great oldies there are, and they're still fighting that war. Now they've moved the oldies to the 80s.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They're aging us out real quickly right now. So,
yeah.
You came back to Tyler for a while too, right?
Yeah, I went. When I went to Satellite Music, I worked for them for a while, and then I think Gary Hamilton was the PD of Pure Gold Station. And one day we just decided that there was no place for Rabbitt anymore. I was just going, man, why can't I play? I just was really disgusted with it. And so I got to talking to Robin Hood Bryans, and he said, well, why don't you come back and work with Miss B at the studio? And I said, okay. So and I was wanting to get back in music at that time, and Bobby Rambo, my guitar player, was so. I just said, okay. So that Satellite Music was really hard to work, I mean, because you had to, half the time you were cutting liners. That's all you did. Because hi, this is Jimmy Rabbitt, and then after a while you forget when you're on the air. I don't know if you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Record enough, you don't know, am I live or am I memory? But
Wow.
so I moved back there, and Mrs. B one day, I was working with Robin's mom and helping run the studio, and one day she goes, you don't know anything about a computer, do you? And I said, oh man, I don't. And she goes, well, I need your help doing that computer. And I said, well, she said, all right, why don't you go back to college? She said, I'll take care of you. You do this, and I'll take care of you. So she sent me back. She let me work part-time and go back to college. So that's when I put in. I was working at KTYL and a whole bunch of stations, KNUE.
Wow.
I went through them all. I played them all. And what was it? KUSA.
KKUS, I think, yes.
Yeah, I went through them 3 formats on that station.
Wow.
That's when I was working back to college. So I was studying computers and computer music and music theory and hanging out in Tyler. And then finally I got an offer to come back here, and I came back to Colorado and worked for a place called KISS Country, which was like it covers all the way, the way they have the translators set up. You cover Colorado from Denver all the way into Aspen and Telluride. So all the way down the major highways, they got translators for the station, and they let me play any country music I wanted to play. And that was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And that's what I started doing. And then I just found the thing today, a Y2K. I had a whole thing about Y2K, and that's what it was in KISS Country. So that's the last place I worked. I got laid off from KISS Country right after. I think right about Christmas, I guess, of Y2K, because they said you were going to leave. So I went ahead and stayed on for a little while just to see if the computers all were going to die. See what was going on, And in fact, I was on the air when Y2K happened.
Wow.
Because they put me on the air and said, well, if anything happens, we want you on the air. So I've been, and I just found a poster that said, spend Y2K with Jimmy Rabbitt. Right? It's amazing. I couldn't believe, I never even saw it as a sales thing. They sold a package to people who were going to be there to see what happened when Y2K happened.
Only in radio.
On the radio.
Only in radio.
I mean, it's really. I'm gonna figure out a way to scan that. And I'm gonna put that on the Facebook just for a laugh. But,
So
the thing I really found was the guy was talking about me in the music business and why they might have to let me go. I want to put that one out there and show people how things were in those days. Because it's a whole long 1-page memo. I've been fired several times, but here's memo with a full-page memo. I mean, this guy was serious. He wrote a serious memo about the whole thing. But what was funny was I was a music director, and I came into the music library, and he came in with this memo. I'll never forget it. And I just found this memo in my stuff. I was looking for some contracts, and I found this memo on McClendon Stationery. And he handed it to me. He said, "You look tired, Rabbitt." He said, "Go home, take a couple of days off, and call me on Wednesday." He more or less said I was fired, which I wasn't fired yet. But eventually I would have been if I don't. It was one of those. But I want people to see how that. I don't know how that'll go across, but there's a whole wording about radio there that people don't realize.
That's insane. Now, you wrote a book?
I'm writing a book now. Twice now I've been contracted, as I say, to write a book. And I took some money once and I had to give it back. And I'm just finally figuring out how I want to tell because I've really been around. I'm like you.
Oh.
You know, like, what was that guy's name? Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes on Facebook, people, you know, I'm just going, wow, I just seemed like I was around for everything. You know, and like today, I was going to post a thing about Johnny Winter, and I said, man, people, you know, if I don't have proof, people are going to think I'm making it up. Because, I mean, that's kind of life. You know, my life has been based on a true story. You know,
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I run across and done so. I mean, I was thrown out of the Troubadour nightclub with John Lennon. I mean, yeah,
That's.
you tell that story. You know, finally somebody admitted they were there that night, and they were talking about it. The Smothers Brothers were playing that night, and you know, and I mean, but if you start, sometimes I start telling stories, and I can see it in their eyes. They're going, "Yeah, right, old man." You know? And so I just say, okay, but one by one, all this stuff's coming. So the book's writing itself. You know, little by little, I find, you know, like I found all the radio. You know, when I beat KHJ, I found the radio. You can find all this stuff now. So instead of just writing a fun book, now I have to go through and make sure all my facts are right. And some of these radio heroes weren't the knights in white satin everybody believed they were. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's some warts I'm going to show. You know, that are fun. I mean, I'm not putting anybody. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So I just kind of read everybody else's book, and if they don't mention it, I just think, well, maybe I should. You know, because there were some wild times in those days. You know, I ran with Johnny Cash, and Waylon Jennings produced my album for Capitol, and I mean, you tell somebody that, and they go, yeah, what are you doing in Grand Junction? You know, or somebody at a record shop. I was at the record shop one time, and they were selling my album. One album was on the used record rack, and somebody said, yeah, that's him. And the guy pointed me out, and the guy said, yeah. So the guy had me signed it, and he said, yeah, is this worth anything? You know, he was impressed that I was on Capitol Records and all that, but he wasn't impressed with the fact that I was standing there looking like a cowboy in Grand Junction, Colorado. It's hard for anybody to believe that. You know, like you know, I mean, I've just been really lucky, and that's the way I look at it sometimes. And I don't know how far to go with telling stories.
Well, it's, you know, what's amazing, what I find amazing about it is that you and so many of the great radio stars of the 60s and the 70s, I guess, came right out here in East Texas, and it just kind of blows my mind when I have a visit with someone like you, and you've lived the life you've lived, and started out growing up here, you know, or at least in your high school days in Tyler, Texas, of all places. And I'm pretty sure Tyler, Texas was not the exciting, thriving place that it is now. So it's
no,
pretty.
No, Randy and I used to ride around listening to WLS and WNOE.
Yep.
You know, back in our days when we were first getting into it, you know, that was the most excitement there was at night, was riding around in your car listening to the radio.
Well, it hasn't changed much.
Yeah, I felt the last time I was there, it seemed like it was really quiet, being quiet, you know.
Well, you know,
even Robin Hood was quiet.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a fantastic story. You've got to get this book finished because I want to read this thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been really lucky, like I said, and I don't want to put anything in the book unless I've got you know, like there's some great quotes that people said about me over the years, and you know, and other people have quoted them, but I finally found one of my exes had kept a scrapbook, and every quote I needed was in this scrapbook.
Wow.
You know, and it was amazing that that didn't get thrown out.
That's incredible.
You know, just that kind of stuff, and it's got a telegram I got from the Beatles manager Epstein when I was at KLIF. You know, it was in there. All that stuff that could have easily been thrown out, but I just ran across it. You know, it's just amazing. Maybe I just kept all that for a reason. But you know, so I don't know how to put all that in the book, but I've got it all.
You need to Somehow, some way, that stuff's got to get on
somehow,
paper.
some way. Either that, or there's another guy I'm talking to about writing a movie.
Well,
and, if I could write a movie about that guy Jimmy Rabbitt, that would be easier than writing.
Oh, but the book, the movie would leave too much out. You got too much life here that needs to be told. I have to ask you one question before we let you go. Having gone through the golden age of rock radio, what do you think of radio now?
I still love to listen to real radio, like we were just talking about that Hoss KKUS, that kind of. I mean, there's people still doing good radio. And what I hate most about radio is that the people are tracking. You know what I'm saying? They're going in and doing their show in an hour. Hey, and they sound like it. Because people get really wordy when they think they have to talk. And I can listen and tell when a jock is tracking because he's trying to sound like he's not. And when you hear somebody like Hoss comes on and talks about what's going on, that's radio. And it's still there, but it ain't XM Sirius. No offense. Not that it really matters, but I mean, that's not radio. But like I say, there is real radio, but like the last time I drove through Dallas, it seemed like everybody they were either tracking or they sounded like they were.
Well, and you have, 5 or 6 stations owned by the same company, and it's a different animal now than it was back when you were in it, back when I got in it, where you actually, the thing that you did, you built your show, you built your playlist, and you talked to the audience about the music. You had to know something about the music. Doesn't seem like there's that, you don't have to have that kind of knowledge anymore because you have no control over the music. It's going to be pretty much set up for you. So it just doesn't seem like it would be very much fun to me now.
Well, you can hear the jocks now. I'm in a smaller market now, but even in Denver, where they're tracking, you can hear evidently the jocks are given like little bios about the groups so that they can talk about them. And they sound like they're reading the bios. Which I think to me, like on classic rock, they want these guys to sound like they know what they're doing. Because and they don't, like in the old days, we read the liner notes. That's where you learned about the, and so you had to go beyond that. But now when I listen to jocks, you can tell somebody wrote this for them to say, well, that was a group that started out as so-and-so, and then later on, and that to me is what that's what they're trying to do. And I'm sure there's kids. I've run into kids because I've done some college radio talks. I've talked to some college radio kids, and they all want those grand, glorious days to come back, and all that. But there's nobody's letting them do that.
It's
and then they go on. Then they hear XM Sirius doing that, and then they go on the college stations and they do things and say things they shouldn't do, and pretty much that's not norm. So they don't really get to an audience. I mean, you listen to a college station, every other word is,
Yeah.
And they play all the music that you can't play on other radio stations. That's a whole big thing with college radio now. It's like underground was once upon a time. So the kids that are growing, anybody who breaks into that, you become a shock jock. But there's not that many places for shock jocks, right?
No.
I mean, shock jock can't go to work in Grand Junction. The radio jobs in Grand Junction are part-time,
right?
Pretty much.
Well, and most of the drive time shows are all syndicated now, and you pick them up on satellite. So it's the same morning show whether you're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or Dallas, Texas, or Denver, Colorado. It's all the same.
Well, that's what I love about the internet. I can do a show on the internet, and I got listeners in Ireland and England and in California, Texas, and Oklahoma. I mean, it's almost like being on the network again. If you can convince people to pay for the bandwidth. It's amazing in radio now that on computer radio you can have too many listeners.
All right.
I never thought that day would come, but you can have too many listeners that you can't afford, or they shut it down because of bandwidth. You've gone over.
That's crazy.
And they think that's great. People think that, I figure if you lost them once, you're going to lose them forever. They're not coming back. That's what they say. I guess if too many people try to get on, or too many people try to log on, and you don't have the bandwidth.
Where can people find your show now?
Oh, okay. You can go to Jimmy Rabbitt at Facebook, and it's listed on there. But I'm on the air out of California, KOCI, on Saturdays from 3 to 6. That'd be KOCIRadio.com.
Okay.
And I do a Tuesday and a Sunday show sometimes at KAFM, which is 88.1 KAFMradio.org.
And you're basically doing the same kind of show you did back in the day, then?
Oh yeah. In fact, the other day, who was it? Dave Mason was talking to Dave Mason.
Wow.
He remembers when I played his album in L.A., and he's on the road now. And somehow these people pick it up. So Facebook, I've got 5,000 friends on Facebook. That's all I can handle. I don't know how to do anything other than that. So every now and then, I get 5,000 I thought you're supposed to be able to have. But every now and then, people die. or I irritate them. I don't know what. So I have a little turnover. But 5,000 is about all I can handle.
Wow.
So if all those people turned on the radio at one time, they wouldn't be able to pay for it.
Wow. Things have changed.
Think about bandwidth that would cost.
That's crazy.
I thought about that one time. I said, well, when I quit, I'm just going to say, okay, everybody, 1, 2, 3, sign on.
It'd be just like KGKB again.
Yeah. Well, no, that was that was really a poignant moment later on. At that time, it just seemed like a bother. That's good line at all. But when you go back and think about it, that was where I started. And I remember walking in, because I was listening to Chuck Dunaway on KLIF as I was driving up to the station to get that first job. And I was trying to decide, because I was working at the Bootery. Is the Bootery still there?
That one I think is still there.
I was working at the Bootery selling shoes, and I was making pretty good money. And whatever they were going to pay me was not that much at KGKB. And I remember listening, and I turned on the radio and picked up clips that went around the loop. And there was Chuck gave me round mouth of sound Dunaway, and I went, yeah, boy, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. I don't want to smell feet. and so I went and took a job, and it was a cut and pay.
I'm sure. Well, you did it well. You did it probably as well as anybody that's ever done it, Jimmy Rabbitt. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time that you gave me today. We're going to put this out on social media and YouTube. I'll probably steal some of your pictures off of your Facebook page to cover it, if that's okay. And we'll share this. I want kids to know what radio used to be like, and how much fun it used to be. And maybe one of these days we can get that back.
I hope so.
I really do too.
Hope so. I know the people are waiting.
Well, I hope it happens. Jimmy Rabbitt, thank you very much for coming on with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, peace.
Hey, peace out. Talk to you later.
One of the earliest members of the Texas Radio Hall of Fame, Jimmy Rabbitt. I'm Bryan Houston. Thanks for listening to this podcast on rattleandhumsports.com.